You're listening to CinePunked. This episode, it's all pretend. My name is Robert J. Simpson. I am your host, and I am joined in this by my erstwhile colleagues, Ben Simpson.
Hello.
He was there for a second. And we are joined by none other than the lovely Films and Faith himself, Mr. Neil Sedgwick.
Hello, everyone.
It is Films and Faith again, isn't it?
It is filmsandfaith.substack.com. Free subscription. Join now.
Regulars will remember we burnt Films and Faith on this show about a year, 2 years ago, and Neil has decided to bring it back from the ashes. So it's nice to have you back with us.
Resurrection is a thing, you know. What are you going to do?
We are recording this remotely today because this is what everyone does now. We're in pandemic times, so we are not able to set fire to anything of Neil's, unfortunately. That is, unless the guy we hired actually turns up in time, in which case I'll get the fire extinguisher ready. For Neil's now looking slightly worried.
checking out the windows.
Knowing Robert, that wouldn't be something that he would do. So
No, I'm not that cruel. Not at all. So that we haven't done one of these for a little while. We're doing this over Zoom, so there is a video version for those of you who want to watch videos, and there'll be an audio version for those of you who like to do it traditionally. But we thought we'd get together and we'd have a chat today about the late great Robin Williams, who we're doing this podcast to mark his 70th birthday, which would have been on the 21st of July 2021. Amazing to think that Robin would have been 70. I can't get my head around that. I can't believe actually it's been 7 years since he's gone, which is quite a long time ago now when you think about it.
yeah, remember the shock? Like it was kind of like really shocked to hear that he'd gone, he'd left us. I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but I do remember it. I was like, that's such a shame, you know, for such a talented fella.
Were you a fan?
Oh yeah, I was definitely a fan of Mr. Williams. I'm not going to do an Elmo and call him Mr. Robin.
Ben and I were watching the HBO documentary about him the other night, so kind of it's very fresh in our minds and kind of very, very used to. What, Neil, were you a fan of Robin? How did his death strike you?
Yeah, like it really was a shock. I think it's something that he's one of those people in my mind, kind of similar to Tom Hanks in a way that I've watched from childhood on.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody like that passes away in any kind of artistic circle, and you've such an attachment to their work the whole way along your life, I think it always kind of strikes you that bit more. There are deaths that occur in kind of celebrity circles that I kind of go, oh, I didn't really know, like that person has no real bearing on my kind of psyche as such. But Robin Williams, yeah, like, and to think that he was, you know, would have been 70 is also quite, because I never think of him in those terms, in that kind of that stage of life. Even at the point of his death, like I never thought of him as that old. He was somebody who was very youthful in kind of how he carried himself publicly, at least. And that, like, you don't associate kind of the number of somebody's years with how they hold themselves, if that makes sense. So yeah, a big loss. Like,
we've talked about Robin a bit on the pod before. He is one of the characters, one of the actors, one of the performers we talk about in the Comedy of Madness show that we did with Robert Ross. And he is one of those performers that, you know, I remember feeling very deeply affected by. I'd actually watched and thoroughly enjoyed his final TV series, The Crazy Ones. I thought it was rather good. I thought he was very good in it, a little bit more subdued, but there was still a lot of that kind of magic there. And it's only when you're watching back and you hear about some of the other stuff that was going on, you realize that maybe all was not so well. But for somebody that I think was such a dynamic force, like when you watched his stuff, when you see his comedy, when you think about even how he does the likes of even just the voice of the genie in Aladdin, I mean, it is not just 24 to the dozen. I mean, this is a guy who ran at 48 to the dozen. He was just so on fire all the time, like a man who was permanently on drugs, even though, you know, he'd long abandoned and got himself cleaned from a lot of that stuff. But he was just a force to be reckoned with, and so full of life and so full of energy.
Yeah, that genie performance, I think, is for those of us around that age, is a big one. And I think, now, I never believe what you read on the internet, but I do think I read somewhere that all those kind of impressions that they had to kind of put those in. Disney just had to go, look, here are the songs that you have to do, and then they just kind of had to let them go because they couldn't kind of keep it in. And there's all sorts of impressions and references in that genie performance that apparently weren't in any of Disney's intention or scripting or any story. No storyboard had some of that, and they literally had to go back and go, flip sake, with the draw Jack Nicholson now into this genie, like, you know. But that may be an internet sensation story. I've no verified source for that, but I did read it somewhere. I hope it's true. Do you know one of those stories that you actually go, I really hope that story is true? But yeah, that genie performance is probably a big one. Like,
No substitutions, exchanges, or refunds. That's all. And don't try to wish for more wishes, because that's a little redundant. 3 wishes, to be exact. No substitutions, exchange, or refunds. My first choices were not good. That's why I had to really kind of go, Disney, Disney. Not since the dancing mushrooms have we seen this much intensity. Walt, shh, burn that tape for all of us.
Do you have favorite performances? I mean, if someone was to say, look, recommend me a Robin Williams film, what would be your default? What would be the one you say, this is a Robin performance, this is the one that you should go and see?
there's so many, like in that kind of childhood stream of things. I think of things like Mrs. Doubtfire, and then kind of more older, mature performances. Obviously, Dead Poets is a big one. But even like more slightly obscure stuff. Like I'm a big fan of Bicentennial Man, where he ends up being the robot butler for the family.
That's brilliant, that one.
I think that's a great film, and I think it's a bit underappreciated in terms of those great Robin Williams roles. And I'm also a big fan of Hook, which I think takes a lot of flack, and I know I heard Steven Spielberg interviewed once, and he said, if I could redo one film, it would be Hook, because I don't think it's good enough. And I kind of went, oh no, don't I? I'm a big Hook fan now, and I've sat with the kids and watched it, and they've enjoyed that too. So, yeah, there's so many we could do. We could fill ours, you know, Good Will Hunting, all those things, and obviously one of the big ones we're going to come to. But yeah.
What about you, Ben? Anything that you'd kind of go to as the default? What would be your kind of
Bicentennial Man, I really like that. And what's the one where he starts off as a grown up, or like he ages like 4 times as fast as a normal person? What's that one called?
Jack.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. It's very sad, but like I think he has that sort of, I don't know, it's like that childishness. Like he does it so well. Like, you know, he's a 8-year-old, but he's in a like 30-year-old's body or whatever it is, you know, that mental and the voices and everything. It just he sits that character down to a T. Hook, yeah, I watched Hook. I don't know. There's so many. There's so many films.
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up remembering watching Mork and Mindy on Channel 4. I mean, so like without realizing it, I was exposed to him from very early age, and that kind of manic, childish, fun persona. Although we later discovered he was on cocaine for a huge amount of it as well. It's sort of, but you know, it was hugely entertaining. And then, I mean, I do remember I remember seeing Hook in the cinema, quite enjoying it. At a point where I didn't go to the cinema that often. But I think for me, Popeye was another weird one, which is not liked by very many people. So we should probably cover it at some point. But that's one that always stuck out in my head because it wasn't quite what I expected. And I think that's what brings me into what we're going to talk about tonight, is that actually when you start looking back on it, we're going to talk about a film called 1 Hour Photo. That's what our focus is tonight. But actually, one of the reasons we were talking about doing this one was because it sort of sat against type. It wasn't Robin playing this kind of usual manic pixie kind of character. This is him doing something slightly different. But when you sit and you start looking back through his oeuvre, there's an awful lot of Robin Williams films that are not very Robin Williams. He does an awful lot of kind of slightly offbeat characters that aren't so manic. I did a little binge over the last couple of days, and I was watching Awakenings, which he's very definitely, he's quite a very reserved, quite a still kind of doctor in that one. Obviously watched this again. I recently watched Dead Poets Society, and also watched Fisher King. I mean, there are a lot of those films that actually they play a slightly different kind of Robin, and it's funny because we have this idea of him as being this kind of really in your face, very gregarious, very larger than life character. But actually, and Insomnia was the other one I watched, which Neil had recommended to me, which I'd never got around to seeing before. But he does these, and actually it's a much, much stiller kind of performance. This is something that's much more subdued and tighter and more dramatic and more powerful in many respects, I think. So have we got Robin all wrong? That's the question. We don't want to answer that one straight away. What we're going to do, we're going to talk about 1 Hour Photo, which, if you've never seen, it was a 2002 film in which Robin plays Cy, the photo guy, a very friendly, slightly weird gentleman who works on a photo booth in a supermarket. And he basically processes photographs. That's what he does. He's very good at it. He loves his job. But he also loves his customers. He feels like he knows them intimately through processing their work day in, day out. And then he gets himself embroiled in a situation where he uncovers a perfect little family that he idolizes. Their lives are not so perfect after all, and it becomes a rather melancholy, kind of sinister film. If you've not seen the film and you don't want to share any spoilers, I suggest that you turn off this podcast at this point, go and watch the film, and then come back. For those of you that have seen it or are happy enough for spoilers, we will continue. So from this point on, if we did a spoiler warning, this is it. You have been warned. There are spoilers ahead.
Someone seems sad. They don't have any friends. It makes me feel bad for them.
Who is that and doesn't have any friends?
Cy.
The photo guy at the 1 Hour place? We really don't know that much about him, you know? I mean, he might even have a lot of friends. And he probably has a girlfriend and a mommy and a daddy who love him.
I don't think he does.
I've been doing mini lab work for over 20 years now. I consider it an important job.
Hi, Mrs. Yorkin. Can I get that address again?
Yes, it's
326 Serrano Terrace.
What you got there, family photos?
Sure.
Yeah, you mind if I take a look?
You're a very lucky man, Mr. Yorkin. You have a wonderful family. And if you don't mind my saying so, a very beautiful house, too.
I'm sorry?
According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the word snapshot was originally a hunting term. You have to look like you're having fun. Smart. Pretend. This is all pretend. Come on! Now!
Academy Award winner Robin Williams. 1 Hour Photo.
Also, if anybody's looking for it, it is available on Disney Plus on that Star bit that they've added with all those kind of Fox Searchlight films, which is actually quite a nice wee catalogue of slight oddities and little kind of semi-independent. I mean, it's not really independent if it's Fox, but like those kind of smaller Fox films that kind of don't get the massive hype machine behind them. So it's on there if anybody wants to go and check it out.
He's very well practiced, isn't he? With all the information he's got at hand. That's down. Okay, what do we think about 1 hour photo? Let's start broad and let's work our way in. I'm going to start let me start by saying I really like this. I went to see this in the cinema in 2002, and like at that point I was watching everything. I had a cinema card, so I literally went to every single film that came out. It was fantastic. Best time of my life. Cinemas in Northern Ireland, please bring back something that will allow me to see every film as many times as I want. But I went to see that, and I remember being really, really struck by it. I found him very, very effective, and again, because it was against the type that I kind of expected from him. And I'm quite fond of my horrors and my thrillers anyway. I suspect that was a big part of it. But I ended up getting this one on DVD not that long after as well. So, and I don't buy everything that I see at the cinema on disc, but this is one I really liked, and I thought was worth rewatching, which I have done, including this week. So I like it. What are your thoughts, Ben? You hadn't seen this before.
No, never seen it before.
So I'm going to come to you first, because I'm really intrigued by somebody who hasn't seen this, what they're expecting and what they kind of got out of it.
I wasn't from whenever I watched the sort of open of it, because I didn't have any like what's the word? Preconception. Whenever I first watched it there, I was like, is this a thriller or a horror or something like that? Because it gives off that vibe like pretty early on, and then I was getting into it, and then you feel sorry for Cy, and you definitely know that he's a quite damaged individual.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really understand why until the sort of last scene, or maybe that's a hint as to what has possibly happened to him in the past, which sounds quite tragic. And you maybe could, I don't know, sort of understand his obsession with photography and photos if that had been part of like that traumatic experience that he'd had whenever he was younger, by the sounds of it anyway. But yeah, no, I was like, it is very creepy. Again, there's kind of like it's definitely a very serious role. Like there's no real laughs or anything like that in it. I don't think I chuckled once. In that movie, because it was just because of the content.
Like that's a tagline. I didn't chuckle once, and it starred fucking Robin Williams.
Yeah. But you expect like maybe like one or two wee gags or something, but you didn't get that. It was very serious, and quite quite scary, in parts as well. Fascinating.
Overall, you liked it, didn't like?
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed it. As I said, I watched Bicentennial Man. I was quite fond of that, and that's sort of pretty serious as well. There's not that many gags in that, but he definitely does have that serious side down. He is a serious actor, or he can act seriously when he wants to. Obviously, looking at that documentary that we watched, there were bits in that where he was cracking jokes in between scenes and things
on this very film,
this very film, yeah. But then you see the performance, and you're like, how can you flip between being the funniest man alive to being so serious in this scene, like 3 seconds straight after the director's yelled action? It's I really enjoyed it.
Neil, So you had seen this before?
Yeah, I saw it a long time ago. I hadn't actually watched it in a good few years. I seem to remember picking it up at Extravision randomly. One of those kind of, oh, Robin Williams on the cover of a video, and kind of going home and then getting 20 minutes in and going, this is not what I thought this was going to be at all. It. Do you think, like, in terms of a genre, would you say thriller? I kind of came away going, this is a bit of a thriller. Like if and I don't really like pigeonholing thing, but would you kind of put it in and around there somewhere?
I think so. I said to Ben it was more of a psychological thriller because he didn't know what to expect, and I kind of had to give him some kind of genre thing. I don't think it's a horror film. There are very definitely elements of horror within it.
Yes,
it could have definitely went horror.
Oh yeah. So there's a couple of moments where it creeps towards that, but this is not. I think the absence of supernatural. I think the absence of graphic violence. Really, I mean, actually, there is a knife, and there is some deeply unpleasant scenes involving sexualized setups, which are themselves fascinating. But this is not a horror film as such. I think it is definitely a thriller. But a pretty kind of
there is a moment where he's having a dream, and he's stood on his own in like the aisle of the supermarket he works.
Oh yeah,
nothing on the shelves, and he goes to his eyes, and the just red comes out of his eyes, like blood or like some kind of color from the toner or whatever. Like it's really quite disturbing, and it's only a few seconds, like at the kind of the tail end of a nightmare he's having, but it's never really explained or dwelt on, and I think its purpose is just to kind of make you realize that this is a troubled individual, that this isn't somebody who is not all there, but somebody who is has something darker within them than we actually realize is being played out. And it's quite a graphic horror type moment.
I know that you want to talk about, I think we collectively want to talk a bit about the aesthetics of this. I think that for me is a Kubrick moment. That's a reference to The Shining, surely. I mean, like that's what I kind of think of. I think about the mall, this shopping center, a bit like the Overlook. It's a bit like when there's a couple of sort of steady cam shots where they're following him around, like after he gets fired, when he kind of walks off and the camera's kind of pulling back, and you can just imagine Jack Nicholson walking through the maze in The Shining at that moment. And again, there is that thing, where they stumble upon all the blood that comes out of the lift and stuff. That I think is possibly, and I've not done enough reading around this to kind of see if it is or not, but that for me is what I feel evoked in that moment.
I watched this with my wife, and when he's coming out of the supermarket like that, she's like, no supermarket's stacked like this. No supermarket has everything so wonderfully blocked off.
It is the cleanest supermarket that I have ever come across.
It's really sterile. The world that he inhabits is very sterile and in many ways bland.
I always assume that he's. I mean, we can almost a bit more of a generalized discussion. I think at this point, like for me, I think I don't want to say he's on the spectrum, because that just sounds like such an offensive and dismissive way of looking at it. But I get the impression that this is somebody who maybe has got some sort of different way of looking at the world. And I think it's what we have for a number of years now lumped as sort of autistic tendencies. He's certainly a bit OCD. He's certainly very OCD, which is not the same thing at all. Just being OCD is not make you autistic or on the spectrum, but I think he definitely shows those kind of tendencies. You look at the way this flat is, how sterile it is. You look at his work environment, but that's not just him. It's this whole world that we're seeing.
Yeah, he has some very awkward customer interactions. Like a social, like you're saying, like there's almost like a like he's unable to recognize social cues from some people and things like that. And he freaks out at one point because the blue in the photo printer is like 0.3 off, and the workman comes to look at it and goes, "Say, nobody cares about this," and he's like, I care about this. And it's like, it's yeah, you're right, like there is those wee things in and around him that's what I mean, where you realize like there's something not
Si, are you kidding me? What? I got 3 of these fucking machines down today. I'm gonna be in Heber Springs by 3.
Larry, all I'm asking you to do is look at these prints.
Plus 0.3. Si, are you fucking kidding me? 0.3? Nobody gives a shit until those shifts are in the double digits.
It's blue, Larry. Well, I'll bet Brant cares about a plus 0.3.
Are you fucking threatening me? You're breaking my balls over a +3 blue shift. Fucking asshole. Next time you call me out here, that thing better be belching fire.
That's a great attitude, Larry. Thanks for your precision work.
like he sees the world differently, and he has ideas of what the world should be differently, which then feeds into how he kind of responds to that family.
Ben was asking earlier if you know, was saying it's a little bit confused by the ending of this. I'm correct?
There's a lot of confusion for me the way this thing ends throughout. I don't know, just while you're talking there, I'm like having like little ideas. Is like, you know, is Sai like a super genius? Like, is he trying to fix this relationship? You know, and this is his grand plan to, or maybe try and get some kind of reaction from what's her name? I can't remember her name.
The wife.
The wife. Yes.
The wife. Who's name that we refer to on screen, because of course Daphne didn't write these things down.
Yeah.
Nina.
Yeah, I was like, is this his grand plan to like fix their relationship? And you know, I don't know. There's lots of questions and crazy theories that you could go down.
Is it? I mean, is this a real world, or actually are we just subjected to Sai's dreamscape for the whole duration of this film? Because as you say, Neil, I mean, it isn't just that Sai's world, which we see his apartment, it is very, very sterile. It is very, very specific. But that supermarket is unlike any supermarket on the planet. I mean, I've been in shops in the States. They do not exist like that. The way that people function, everything is, there's nobody replenishing the stock. It's just always perfect. Is this all a fantasy?
It could be.
Possibly. There are some great fantasy moments in the film, like fairly early on, where you think he has broken into the house.
Yes.
He's sitting outside the house and you think he has walked in. He has gone around the house, looked at everybody's bedroom, said, "Oh, Jack, the young son, you really need to tidy your room, and I bet your mother's told you." Then he goes and takes a dump. Then he goes and puts the guy's hoodie on and sits watching the football. The family walk back in and treat it like everything's normal and he's just part of the furniture. And then it cuts back to the car. And it's so well done, because even having seen it lots of years ago, I was convinced in that moment something was going to happen.
Yeah. My heart was in my chest whenever they were coming into the house. I was like, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? What's happening? And then they're like, Uncle Si, and I'm like, what? Yeah. And then cut the car. It's like, oh wow, that's the head melt in half.
So he does very clearly have great imagination or fantasies about what he wants, because the other thing that we talked about when we watched it was the easy thing to do with this film is to make it a sexual thing, right? Mm-hmm. So the really easy play of this is to make him attracted to the wife and want to be with the wife. That's not what this is.
No.
There's no real sexual element to it.
He's very asexual.
Yeah.
Really, isn't he?
Completely. There's no inference of any kind of kind of sexual want towards anybody in this family at all. It is
Yeah.
pure. His desire is to be, to my mind, is to be part of this family, because he has idealized and fantasized this family into perfection, which then it transpires they are not. And that actually sends him over the edge, because somebody has presented, he has worked out in his head this idea of perfection, and then that perfection becomes imperfect, and he can't cope with that. And to go back to what you were saying about the kind of be it like a possible ASD thing or something like that, when when you have an idea of something and it doesn't work out, that can cause a reaction. That is what you suffer from. So yeah, it's very, 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 very interesting. Yeah, it's those moments of fantasy and the tension that comes with those is what makes it a thriller in many ways, because it's not like you're saying, Ben, that like the pounding you get in your chest in that moment where you think he's in the house. The kind of the thrill of what is going to happen is the thing that creates the emotive response. And yeah, and he's so cold. Like he's so unemotional, really, until towards the very end, when he's starting to kind of unravel a bit.
Yeah.
That it's really clever in making us have such an emotive response to those moments with a character this is not a psychotic individual or angry individual. There's no, it's very kind of hard to get a read off him. I think it is at his core. Once we get to the end, we realize that this is somebody who just wants normality and wants to be part of a loving family.
Do you think it's that simple though? I mean, there is I think something slightly sociopathic about the way he goes about stuff. I mean, there is an element of him being almost like a robot, which again might tie in with the these other suggestions of whatever it is that he's projecting, or what we're meant to think that he's projecting. He doesn't feel like a regular guy. You've said this already. He doesn't read social cues properly. He's awkward with his transactions, but he is also kind of mirroring and trying to ingratiate himself. Now, obviously, he buys the toy for the child, which could be seen as a very genuine attempt at kind of trying to bond with the family by doing a nice thing. There doesn't seem to be anything untoward, although obviously as he's walking across the park with them, you're kind of thinking, is he a pedophile? Without a doubt, you're meant to think that this guy's a pedo. But then there's also that point where, he sees the book that she's reading, and he isn't reading the book to understand. I think he's reading it to lure her in. Hence, then he follows her to the mall and forces himself into a seat adjacent to her, and happens to have read the first 20 pages of the book. So he's got a choice quote within you can see when he opens it, it's very early on, apparently, in that book. He's not gone halfway through. He's picked something quite early on. It's the sort of thing that you sort of see in rom-coms and things. It's like, oh, I'm going to pretend I'm an intellectual. I'm going to pretend I'm reading a book. But it's not actually what you're up to. I mean, that is slightly disturbing, is it not?
Yeah, but I think there's more to that scene as well. Like,
well, it's even when he shows the photograph of his mother that we know is not his mother.
Yeah.
Do you have any children, Si?
Me? No, I'm not married.
No girlfriend?
No. I have a snapshot of my mother, though.
She looks very nice.
She's passed away.
Oh. I'm sorry, Si.
Yeah, but yeah, have you ever been to like a car boot sale or anything where somebody has been selling old random photos?
Yeah, I buy them. I am sad,
You actually you have?
Yeah, but
is this a thing that happens?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have I have some great photographs I got on job lots on eBay of like German soldiers during the war, just out in the ranks. It's and photographs of people I have no idea who they are, but the photographs are cool.
No, but that kind of has a bit of a historical context to it.
I don't like people's snaps. I mean, I haven't gone that far yet.
The photos that he buys, or the photo that he buys, looks like it's from like a personal collection, because they're not like they're kind of like passport wallet sized photos. They're not it's not like portraits of, you know, pieces of art or whatever. And the mother, right, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the picture he picks as the mother looks a lot like Nina. Or very similar to. I felt anyway.
You're probably right, and I don't think I picked up on it properly. That's interesting.
I kind of looked at that photo when he first picked it up and thought that looks a bit, and then particularly when you see her in the mall moment, she has a very different kind of hairstyle in that moment, and to what we've seen before. And when he takes the photo out and she looks at it, I felt it was very not a direct likeness, but certainly a very similar likeness in between the photo and her.
So what's the reading then of that? I mean, is this to say that he's looking? Is this actually an indication of the sort of relationship that actually he wants? Is that there is the sense of being mothered is something that he's lacking?
Yeah, I think like in the fantasies, he wants to be the uncle, or he is referred to as Uncle Si by them, and I don't know. Does he want to be a child of the family? Does he want to be a sibling of the adults? I'm not quite sure. I think the buying of the toy and the buying of the book are to generate ways in to family life. I didn't particularly feel they are sinister, although when he's sitting on the bleachers in the kind of tan, like khaki gear, do you know what it reminded me of? And it gave me the creeps. You know, Steve Buscemi in Con Air, that very creepy scene where he goes and sits with the little girl when he comes off the plane at the kind of deserted, empty swimming pool.
Okay.
I kind of thought of that, and that moment is very creepy. I didn't think I'd get the Con Air from this, but I'm going to go there anyway. But that kind of like, you're right in terms of there is something uncomfortable for any adult watching an interaction with somebody who's slightly off with a child, because you're like, there is a protective element within us all that goes, what's going on? You know, and the coach kind of goes, "Are you okay?" And the kid goes, "Yeah." And that's that. And I'm like, need to up the safeguarding at that football team, I tell you.
Yeah. Well, you're both parents. I mean, so I'm assuming that you would sort of see potentially the implicit threat within that. I mean,
yes.
I mean, Ben is a man who knows how to tussle. Do you feel like tussling, Si?
Initially, I was like, what is he doing? Like, why are you there? How the heck do you know he's at a football game? As well, that's because no, that's not mentioned anywhere. And then there's this scene with him playing football, and then you expect the parents or something to be there, but there's Si. It's like, how the hell did he know? You know, I did get like, oh my god, is he like a pedo or some kind of creep? But then you see him, like, you know, he just wants to give him the toy. But again, I don't know too many kids, if they were given this fancy toy, would say no.
Yours wouldn't, you mean?
Mine wouldn't. No, they probably wouldn't. They'd probably be like, yeah, give me that. That's amazing.
Neil, yours, would they say no? I'm not trying. I mean, I am actually uncle to Ben's kids, so that's okay.
Yeah, but it's that thing of when you are familiar with a person.
Yeah.
You know, there is there is a thing where it's not a stranger. No, it's not a close family friend either, but it's not a stranger to the child. So it maybe, I thought in that moment that the child says no because there was the moment in the store and the dad was like, no time for any more toys, let's go. And he realizes if he brings that home,
he might get in trouble.
There's gonna be questions that will then come back to Sai, and then because the child is very keen on Sai, likes going to the photo booth, likes doing that, likes leaving in the pictures, picking them up, getting away instant camera because it was his birthday. There's a friendliness there that I think in that moment, I think the boy realizes if he takes the toy, that all goes away potentially.
Yeah.
And that is more, I think that's a bigger risk to the child than actually taking the toy, I think. Or it might just be that I'm a very lax parent and the child is brilliant in that moment and should be applauded for his clarity of conscience and strong will.
What's wrong? It's the one you wanted.
Mr. Parrish, I can't take this.
Sure you can, Jake.
My parents wouldn't let me. I better be getting back home now.
You sure?
Yeah, thanks anyway, Mr. Parrish.
Okay, see you around the store.
Okay.
Hey, Jake. The name's Sai.
Okay, Sai.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, they should definitely be applauded because no one kids. I don't think that that's a normal thing that they would do, unless they've been strictly told by the parents. Obviously, I've told my kids don't take stuff from strangers. So maybe
I feel now we've got a CinePunked test coming on with theirs. It's Uncle Neil giving stranger danger.
Yeah.
Anyone,
I don't know.
anyone with a beard's fine. Taking stuff from them. I think there's a couple of things I want to kind of tease out. One, I just want to pick up on what I think is the glaring plot hole in the film, which is the fact that it takes them until this point to pick up that Sai has been printing off extra prints.
Yeah,
which clearly he has been doing for the last 9 years.
Sai, there's been some discrepancies in the click count.
That's probably Yoshi. His math skills are pretty weak, but I told you about that when you moved him over from audio.
No, all the discrepancies are around the logs that you initialed.
They are?
Yeah.
Well, I guess sometimes the end of the week you get a little tired.
We're not talking about a few innocent math errors, Sai. The net clicks all zero out. They always zero out. The problem is, Sai, that the shutdown clicks don't correspond at all. I mean, they don't even come close to matching the amount of prints that we sold.
Well, then it's probably a problem with the reorder counter.
Well, I asked Larry about that.
What'd he say?
Well, he looked at the counter and said that it checked out. He also said that in 14 years of servicing, he's never seen a faulty counter on an AGFA unit.
Really?
Well, so the question is, Sai, where did all those unaccounted for prints go?
Well, what kind of discrepancy are we talking about, Bill?
We're talking about hundreds of prints, Sai.
That's not possible, Bill.
Oh, no, I've done the math. And the POs confirm it, too.
Well, I don't know anything about it.
Well, I think you do, Sai.
Because he's got pictures of that family right from the word go. And it's only now 9 years in, they go, Sai, you've got a lot of extra prints been going off. What's been happening? It's just he's been doing it for years. Why is he only getting stopped now?
Yeah.
Just don't see it. Also, I mean, you see those prints up on the wall, you're thinking, if you've been taking all those prints for years, there's going to be more photographs than this, surely.
Yeah, there's no way that's 9, 11 before that, because you had pictures of them two together without the child, and then when the child was born, and their college days even.
I mean, it could be that thing where you find a roll of film. I found one this afternoon, that's been sitting in your drawer for 20 years, and you kind of take it along and get it developed. It's just well, this could be good memories. It could be bad. Let's wait and see which X is on these photographs.
Yeah.
that thing about the manager too, because I said the same thing when we were watching it. and I was like, how is this only being caught now? Is this a new manager? Is this a new thing? But also then, just to completely take back my comments about him not being a psychopath, when he then leaves the film in to be developed after he is sacked, and it is the daughter of the manager, that's like at that point of unraveling, that's a moment where you're like, oh, crazy man.
But I think that's part of his plan. His ultimate goal is to be caught by the police.
Yeah.
So he's done that. Like, I think he's smarter. Like he's forward thinking and planning stuff out well in advance.
Well, I mean that's very definitely a deliberate, because even just the nature of those photographs, it's not like he's been monitoring her as she goes about her daily business, which is where, you know, if you were PI or whatever else, you would really wind people up. It's literally one continuous set of shots that get closer to her from one position. All he needs to have done is drive past the house once, taken that roll of film, and it's enough to set off the chain reaction that it then induces. I think even the cops kind of recognize that he's just trying to piss you off because, you know, this did not go down well. But it is just that little hint of menace, and because it's a child, again, it just brings back all our kind of instincts.
It lifts the level of that. Like if it was a wife, say, or a partner, yes, that's threatening, but it's not. It's not as menacing as taking a picture of a young child who would be a lot more defenseless, etc. That doesn't mean taking pictures of the wife and making them into a flick book would be okay, but you know, I think there's a certain level of menace in it being a child. Yeah,
there is something kind of interesting about this film, and the fact that we're talking about a film that's about a 1 hour photo booth, that it's a film about the end of the analog era. There was even a conversation where they talk about saying about getting a digital camera. Oh no, don't go digital, you know, then I'd be out of a job. You're out of a job anyway. But like we're talking about this sort of era, you know, I think you've said already, like people don't, we were talking about this before we just started doing the record, people don't take photographs anymore. We don't have photo albums.
Yeah, in the sense
we have photo albums on Facebook,
but we don't have physical photo albums. We don't have, you know, like lean across my desk, you know, I mean, I've got packets of these still from the benefit of our listeners, not our viewers. I have an album of photos in my hand, actual photographs, which I'm not going to share with the group because I don't know what's in them. Oh no, it's all right. It's dead celebrities.
Shout out to Bates.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be one of those guys who takes in my my porno photographs to the chemist anyway, with the whole thing that's going on there. Although I did work in a video store round about that time, and you know, we would sell softcore DVDs, and occasionally you get guys who would return them, so they didn't work. You know, think, looking at how grubby they were, you go, no wonder it doesn't work. It's all covered in lube. True story. Sorry, Neil.
I was going to say DVD didn't work, or DVD didn't work for the individual.
That's exactly why I used to say them, but you had to take it back. It was just weird. But anyway, I digress. But there is this odd thing. I mean, like, this is the end of an era. This is an era where people did go out of their way. And I had never really contemplated before that if you go to the same place day in, day out, week in, week out, and you're always leaving your films in, there is a kind of relationship between the people that you leave them in with, because they see everything. They see all your prints. They get an access into your life that you have no control over. On Facebook, you at least can, certainly at various points, it's been better or worse, you know, where you can actually limit who gets to look at whatever's in your albums. You know, you can be very, very restrictive in this, but here you've no idea.
And even to the point where he recognizes the woman that the husband is having an affair with, which we haven't even talked to. So she comes in randomly and isn't a regular, but he has enough of kind of like a Rolodex memory to go, I know you from somewhere. And it's actually from one of the family's photos.
Mm-hmm.
When you see him up on the wall with like this great little magnifying, like looks like a
When
like a wing mirror, yeah.
Yeah.
With like the wee spot of magnification in it, and like he's able to go and pick that out from that wall, you know, and yeah, like that thing of he has kind of watched a lifelong flick book of this family in some ways coming out of that printer that he loves so much. That's it's interesting. It did make me want to like take a photo on film. It did have a very like nostalgic feel to it, even to the point of those early, because some of the cameras digital. No, he's not using any of those were digital, you know, and he's got like the scope lens kind of coming out.
No, so it's all analog
film.
Yeah. They certainly have maybe digital displays and stuff, but they're, and even the scanner, the printer machine obviously has a digital element to it.
Yeah.
But it's a digital element that processes and it develops the stuff in an analog chemical way.
Yeah. Like he also gets one of the interesting things coming away from it too was he also gets to see everybody's imperfections as well. Whereas now, if we take a photo we don't like on our phones, we just go, hang on, we'll do it again and take it. You know, we just delete it straight away, get rid of it, and get the right one. Like I would imagine, like between the three of us, there's very few, not totally perfect pictures, but the pictures that we want are on our phones now. The picture, like I remember getting photos developed and like a third of them being, you know, absolutely useless because you like had your thumb over the lens or you know, something like that, and it's
a bit of shake on the
like that's
picture, a bit of blur.
That's not in our world anymore. It's interesting.
There's definitely something going on there. I did anyone else notice there's a bit of shake actually in the camera in some of the sequences? I had forgotten about this. I remember watching it originally and thinking like, what's going on? Was it just like somebody had cocked up on a roller or something? But it's only in certain shots.
Connection.
No, there is very definite shake in some of the shots, and when I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering, is that deliberate? Is this like almost like the process of sort of like, if I don't know how many of you or how many of our listeners or watchers have actually ever used darkroom. But when you go on through that whole procedure, there is a point at which you're kind of developing the film, and there is a bit of a shaking in the chemicals. Whenever you've got Polaroids, you know, people used to shake it like a Polaroid picture, you know, to help that kind of, which apparently you shouldn't do because it's not good for the Polaroid. But there is that process where that action kind of makes the stuff solidify, becomes real.
Now, you see, it's interesting now you say that in the context of saying, is he living in a fantasy world? Do those moments happen at points of unraveling? I can't remember now. I'm thinking out loud.
I'm not sure because I didn't note it down, but I find it such an odd effect, and it's quite a subtle one.
I can't remember now either, but I'm thinking, is it a shaking of his world type thing in those moments? Do you know?
Ben didn't even notice by the looks of him.
I didn't notice. I didn't notice one bit.
I genuinely, because we both commented on it when we were sitting watching it, and I genuinely thought it was something with like the connection to Disney Plus that I had.
I would have to rewatch it again and see like where this is.
It only happens twice, maybe 3 times. It's not a regular thing.
And there's no way that wouldn't get picked up on dailies. And clearly they were in that shoot enough time to get that fixed. This is why I think it's possibly a deliberate thing.
Yeah, probably is a deliberate thing.
And bearing in mind everything else that's going on, because I'm thinking about this in terms of the process, in terms of the fantasy. And I mean, ultimately we're talking about him living in a fantasy world, him projecting himself onto these images, which is exactly what we do whenever we watch a film. If we allow ourselves to get immersed in a film, we are projecting ourselves onto the screen. And the idea for most of us is that actually we imagine ourselves as part of the world of that film. We're immersed by it. And so we kind of buy into it. And that's kind of what he does within this, that he's buying into this world of this little fantasy. Even whenever it comes down to the sequence where they're in the hotel room,
with and he gets up to the room and with the knife and everything.
Yeah, let's talk about their eyes wide shut moment. I'm convinced there's a lot more Kubrick in this film than but when he's in that, he makes them pose for a number of photographs. Now, Neil, you've already said it's not sexualized, that he is not, he's quite an asexual being. And
just pretend. Don't actually do it. Just pretend.
He almost turns them into mannequins.
Yeah.
Like even the way they're holding their arms, I'm doing it on the video. They're like very kind of like, arms are at right angles and there's nothing about the poses that he puts them into that looks natural and human at that point. Like they look very, very like kind of shop mannequins.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
And then there's no actual pictures.
Well, this is the point I want to get to, because he clearly takes a bunch of photographs and he asks to see them because they process them. He says, "You guys got a lab?" It's like, "Yeah, we've got a lab." Can I see my pictures? Like, it's not a courtesy. But whenever he does finally get to see the photographs, we're expecting, I mean, you're kind of thinking, like, are the cops really going to let him jerk off over a bunch of like sexualized images? And what we see is the most mundane kind of, I mean,
hotel sink and everything.
So you can't help but ask yourself questions about what actually is going on at that point. I mean, there's clearly something. He clearly does kidnap them. I mean, I think there's enough said by the cops that there's something goes on. And he goes through the motions of taking photographs, but he doesn't actually seem to take the photographs.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I think there's some next level brain stuff going on with him. Like,
I thought when he lays the photos out and he kind of lays them out and kind of snakes them round, I was like, is there some kind of like, are you going to pan up and see like something in the color of the photos? Like, I was expecting to see like somebody's face or something in it, and I was, because it was so like purposely done in a very particular order.
Yeah.
I kind of wondered, was something going on there, or is he able to look at those pictures and go, that's the moment where I had them do this, that's the moment where I had them do that? Does he see what was happening like on the bed or in the bathroom at that point when he looks at the door handle? He knows where everybody in the room is. I think his brain is quite photographic. I think he has a very like photographic recall, and I wondered, those photos look like nothing to the police, but to him, they capture, because you hear these kind of voiceovers of photos capturing moments, and I wondered, those photos in that moment signify something to him that the police will go, he's took a picture of a doorknob, what's going on?
Yeah.
I kind of wondered, was that the reference? And also then I just kind of wondered, was it like when they come to the police and say, he did this to us, he did that, and he took photos of us, and they go, well, we've got a photo of a sink. Is it to, and is that what he has gone through, where he has had that experience where nobody believed him?
Yeah.
And he's now reliving that. He's now pushing that kind of onto them.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So that was just a couple of thoughts that went through my head.
I mean, I think it's also worth referencing back that Deepak Chopra line that he quotes to her in the calf, where he says, the things you're most afraid of have already happened. And I kind of feel that this is back to my film studies education days, where you kind of, my professor would have always kind of pointed out whenever something is being cited as being an important piece of information. So there's a deliberate reason that he's quoting that. And it's almost kind of, if it's already happened, then the whole thing with the kidnapping and the threat of violence, I mean, does that mean that hasn't happened, that it's already been and gone, that how are we meant to view the reality? I find it complex, and I really want to go back and watch this again now with kind of the knowledge that actually maybe,
I don't know, did that bit in the bedroom actually happen though as well? Because you know that his because you've seen scenes where you thought were real turned out to be a fabrication, you know, in his head. Is that hotel room scene a complete fabrication in his head as well? Like, did he actually go into that room?
One of the comments after our viewing was, "That's the cleanest looking police station I've ever seen in film."
Oh yeah. That too.
Like it's a very white. When you think of police interview rooms, kind of traditionally in film,
yeah, they're always like
grey,
and...
dull, dingy. Like that's very white, clinical,
overexposed.
One red chair sitting in front of him. He's very white in terms of what he's wearing, and you're like, that's not. It doesn't have the feel of a normal police station.
Yeah.
And maybe that's maybe I'm getting to the point of over analyzing thing, but in the context of the supermarket as well,
I don't think so, because even within his apartment, when you talk about the police scene, like I think about that apartment where we're looking at the wall of photographs that he has lit up by the sort of lights that you would get at a crime scene
or construction
site.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that if Neil was to stick a wall of photographs and decide to be a creep alongside them of somebody else's family, as I said to him the other day, I was like, I've never actually seen Neil's kids. I mean, or his wife. I mean, I just assumed that this is a real family that he's got, not just photographs.
None of them are real.
But you know, if you're going to do that, chances are you're going to stick your overhead light on. You might have like an upstand or somewhere that you'll point in that direction. But how many of us will take like a construction site or a crime scene?
I thought they were like very art gallery lights. I thought he was using that wall as an art kind of installation of some sort, like those lights kind of pushing up and to lift the color and to lift the life out of those in the dullness of his apartment. Because his apartment's very beige as well. His entire world is very beige.
Apart from his blue waistcoat.
Yeah, apart from when he's at work.
And his messenger bag.
Yeah. And I thought that's be it a directorial choice or to express something of the character, to go, that's where he sees life and that's where he sees color and vibrancy in somebody else's life. And the lights kind of accentuate that for him. Like I kind of looked at it as like an art exhibition of sorts, because they're also, I don't know if they're all in order necessarily, but they're, when he stands back a bit or when the camera comes back a bit, they're very again very organized, kind of color wise up and down the wall.
There are definitely points where you're looking at and there's like 3 or 4 photographs that are clearly from a burst, which is kind of interesting as well in terms of sort of cinema, you know, because it's, you know, film is a series of consecutive images that are then juxtaposed in the cuts, and that's where we get our meaning from. So it's almost like you have these little bits of mini film within that. You know, you could get like a microsecond of moving footage if you stuck those things together. So I don't know what's going on, and I haven't counted how many there are there, if there's any significance in the number of rows across, the number of things down. When it was 24 frames a second, it's a 24 photographs in each row. I have no idea. But I kind of want to go back now and think about the whole thing as like a fabrication and as a dreamscape and as some great commentary on cinema itself.
Possibly. I think it's a really, really clever film, and I think it's so I think it's a film you can watch on the very kind of basic thriller level, but I think there's actually a lot more going on under the surface about kind of human psychology in some ways and how we view the world. Like if you think of taking an actual photo, like that bit where he talks about snapshot, you know, and snapshot being originally a hunting term, no designated target, just a point and shoot, go bang, Like that's all very interesting to me. Like what I was saying then about, like, if we take a snapshot of this now, like what are we capturing in that moment? You know, so what are we looking for? What are we looking at? And what kind of is, like, where's our viewfinder pointed when we're looking at life? Who are we pointing it towards? Why are we pointing it towards them? You know, those types of questions kind of have rattled around in my brain the last couple of days, and just a desire to get out and take some photos, even if it is on my phone.
So I want to say something creepy at this point about this, but I'm going to. Just one more kind of thought from me, I guess, is, would this have worked if it had been somebody else playing the part of Cy? I mean, what does Robin Williams bring to this that somebody else doesn't? Because obviously, whenever you're casting a film, you know, you cast actors for a reason, and everyone brings something else. What is it about Robin Williams that makes this so effective? Ben, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this one.
I don't know. After watching that, that documentary about him, when you hear about his life and things that have gone awry, and sort of, you get a glimpse into his like mental psyche a bit, even from things he says at his stand-ups and stuff like that. Whenever you look at some of the scenes, and you can see the sorrow, like even in his eyes. You can see a sadness and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's like just him being a fantastic actor, or if that's him actually living. You know, the way you get some actors who are method actors, and they become the person they're playing. I don't know what kind of style Robin has, but I don't know. It probably wouldn't be the same film if it was a different lead.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to one of the things that they actually say. It's the person that you least expect. There's a moment in it where he sits and watches the Simpsons episode with Sideshow Bob. It's very on the nose too. It's very it's almost annoying.
More psychopathic killers.
Yeah, but there is this kind of line in the background when he's sitting there of, it's the person that you least expect. And for me, picking up a video all those years ago with Robin Williams on the front of it, I didn't expect that performance.
Yeah.
So you don't expect when you the expectation or the caricature of Robin Williams is the mork, the Good Morning Vietnam, the loud, the kind of expressive. Robin Williams dialed down out of the caricature is very unexpected. So if you put somebody like Ben was saying there about method acting, so if you say, for example, Daniel Day-Lewis got that role, yeah, no problem, I can see that. But for it to be somebody who in and around that time as well was doing a lot more kind of family type films and end of things, and traditionally would have been looked at as I suppose, and unfairly, probably a family film guy.
Yeah.
It's very out of character and unexpected to see them then as disturbed or psychopathic or sociopathic or whatever you want to kind of put that into. And I think that's the thing. It's the person that you least expect. So like, I'm trying to find somebody kind of in my head in the modern, like kind of now, like some kind of equivalent to him. And I can't, do you know what, that just shows you how good he is, because I can't even think of one off the top of my head. I'm trying and I can't even get one. But if you think of people, more comedic actors or traditionally more comedic actors in that role.
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy was Eddie Murphy is in my head. Like,
yeah,
it would be jarring to see somebody. It's like seeing somebody out of context. Because our expectation is that this person is all kind of razzle dazzle, loud, yeah, all that stuff, you know.
I don't think I've ever seen a serious Eddie Murphy movie.
I think there's bound to be a couple.
I don't think he's done one.
It's bound to have done one somewhere. That's a question for another day.
Yeah,
I think it is that thing. It's that expectation of the Robin Williams persona that's still in my head is this great comic, full on person, and that I'm increasingly aware of actually was not everything about him. And it's not that we're colored now by knowing how his story ends. It's actually just seeing that there were a lot more of those films that he was making, and somehow, and a lot of them were quite well acknowledged and respected at the time. It's just that his star persona was such that it overshadowed anything else that he did. You knew that he could do straight, and he could do serious, and he could do still, but we still just imagined it's Robin Williams. That's what we kind of expect. I mentioned Kubrick a couple of times during this, and just flicking back through notes there, I'd completely forgotten. Jack Nicholson was apparently approached for this, and he said no because it was too like The Shining, which, like, I think when you start thinking about that, and if you think about Jack as the alternate casting for this, I think that overhang is very definitely in this film. I think that the shadow of the Overlook is definitely on that mall, and in the same way that when you watch The Shining, you're left wondering about actually where the reality and the fiction falls. Because even now, I when I sit and I think about it and I watch it, I find that film very hard to unpick satisfactorily.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when you say that. Like, I can see Jack Nicholson doing it, but it's also it's different. You know, like it feels different. Where while I can see it, I don't think it would hold the same power or the same impact, or potentially the longevity that this film has, because this is 2002, so we're approaching a 20-year anniversary on this already, which seems strange. 2002, my brain can't quite process that. That time gap is as big as it is.
Huge, yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, I think I'm going to say that I think that this film, despite the fact that we're talking about an analog situation, and today we're looking at this from a digital era, I think a lot of what it brings up, a lot of those kind of elements are still just as valid today. I think the fear of for your children and for your partners and all the rest of it is still very much there. I think that whilst you may not have a guy flicking through your photographs in a chemist's picking up in your life, I think that the way that we share on our social media definitely raises a lot of the same concerns.
For me, a great role to do because it creeped people out so much. Yeah. I was in San Francisco and this hardcore homeboy walked up and I thought, oh man, he's gonna mug me. And he went, man, 1 hour photo creeped me out, man.
Yeah.
And I just went, oh dude, but I guess because people found it so disturbing before, like even the internet, that people would have access to, your life or living vicariously through your photos. But now it's kind of a standard.
Because again, you never know quite who's looking at it. And I say I haven't deleted somebody off my Facebook today for those very reasons. Because I don't want them having access to parts of my life anymore. I think that stuff all seems very, very relevant. And I think that we're in an era now where picking up on somebody who's a cheating spouse, for instance, is probably a lot easier. It's much, much easier for us to forensically pinpoint when someone's shaking around.
Yeah, if you made this now, it'd probably be in a phone shop. Probably remade
an Apple shop.
Yeah, he's just Cy the Apple genius.
Yeah,
I can see that,
getting obsessed with somebody and like doing something to their computer, so they have to come back. Like just putting a wee dust ball under the space bar. Just to get them back in and have a flick through their iPhoto.
Yeah, it could work.
I feel that's a lived experience.
We can remake this now.
I think you could. I think it would very easily translate to, society in 2021. I don't think that there's anything that unusual. And now I'm thinking about it, I guess that maybe some of the supermarkets of the last year during the pandemic have maybe felt a little bit like the supermarket he works in at times, but very nicely organized, hardly anyone there, only allowed to go in one direction.
Yeah, and you don't have anybody with those that skill set in a supermarket now. Like I'm just as you're saying that, I'm thinking of like the big Tesco near me. Other supermarkets are available, and it's it's touch screen. I think like if you do still print photos at all, take your SD card, connect your phone in, and do it yourself. There's no kind of technician there anymore. I don't know if even the big boots in Belfast. I said to Ruth, do you remember going in, leaving photos in, and walking around town for an hour or 3 hours, and then going back to pick the photos up?
Yeah.
Do you know? I don't even know if that's still a thing there anymore.
I'm actually not sure. I don't think so. I think that there's a couple of places will still do like film processing, but few and far between. And even the big camera shops, like places that were specifically for cameras, I don't think you get it in Jessop's. In fact, you're lucky if you go into Jessop's now and they actually have any film equipment. I'd like to buy some chemicals, please, so I can develop my photographs. I've come to the photo shop. Where are the chemicals, please? Huh?
Yeah. Print photos end up now in art exhibitions because that's how out of date they are. Like the darkroom stuff is all for like art colleges and things like that. It's not for kind of me just messing about on my taking photos on my phone. I don't need any of that. I have Lightroom now. I can just do it myself. I don't need a watery chemical thing. I just kind of slide a wee bar up until I think it's nice, and then that's it. We all do it. Filtered we're filtering our lives for in terms of content and to make it look better than it is at times. That's what we're doing. So Sai was maybe keeping an eye on us all, and maybe that maybe somebody keeping an eye on us for the imperfections isn't the worst thing in the world.
I suppose.
Anyone want to add anything else before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so.
Can I just talk about how obsessed I became with the color?
Yes, I meant I couldn't work out if we covered the color enough for you, Neil. So
in
please talk about it.
I have found myself looking at pictures.
I'm pretty sure that whatever it is that you're wearing right now is actually in Sai Shop colors.
Sai Shop colors. My little T-shirt. I'll cover up the label. Advertising. Hang on, where's that? Sai. Very early on, he comes out of the shop to go to his car, and he matches the lighting in the scene. It's very, like I said earlier, very beige. His apartment, very beige. He merges into any background he's in. He's got that kind of chameleon thing going on, where and I think the intention of that is so you don't notice him. Everybody else is much brighter, and particularly the family. Their home is much brighter. Their clothing is that bit more bright than his. There's just when he's in the supermarket, he doesn't really stand out because he matches the entire color scheme of everywhere he is around. And I kind of wondered, is that a photographic color choice? Like that thing of you're saying like it had to be that quote from the Chopper book because that quote means something. It's like in my mind, the color scheme means something to make him disappear into the background of where he appears. The only time he stands out is when it's slightly odd. So when he meets the kid at the football practice, he stands out like a sore thumb in the color scheme. He's still very beige, but everything else around him is much more colorful, and it makes him stand out. When he goes to the mall and meets her, he really stands out. He's really noticeable because everything else is quite colorful, alive, neon lights, and he's just there kind of bland.
With his blue bag.
His blue messenger bag, and it just makes him, in some ways, when he wants to be seen, he stands out. And when he doesn't, he disappears into whatever world he inhabits.
Yeah.
And I just became really obsessed with the colors, and I just thought it was really, really clever and really well done.
I think it's clearly deliberate. I mean, that blandness, the beige. I had an ex who used to talk about I occasionally would wear all beige clothes. She had a massive problem with it.
I hate beige.
There's that kind of vitriol. It's just boring. It's just all beige. Beige is a boring color. It's like, do you know what? I feel like just blending in today. I don't feel like peacocking around the place. But also there's something I think it edges towards representations of purity. I mean, we look at white as being a very pure color. So the absence of kind of color often is aligned with innocence and purity. And I wonder, is that a little bit of that? I mean, down to his sort of bleach blonde hair. Are we meant to look at him as a slightly pure person because he looks at the world differently? He doesn't judge people particularly. You know, he's got to report the kiddie porn, but he doesn't really have an issue with the guy who's taking the pornographic pictures. He doesn't have an issue with a lot of the other things that are going on. Whenever the relationship doesn't seem right, whenever there seems to be something that confuses his idea of this perfect family, that's when he becomes alive. But it means that he kind of goes to that whole space, I guess, just as if he belongs in it, as if he's part of it. Maybe those are the bits. It's the size world and it's the real world, you know. So maybe that scene in the park is the real world. So size stands out because he is not part of that world. But whenever we're in the mall, that's his version of the mall that we're seeing. It's his version of the police station. It's his version of the apartment. And it's, you know, as you said, that we're kind of, you talked about being like an art exhibition, Neil, when we see the colors, those photographs on the wall, and that it kind of almost takes away from his space, the real world sort of making its way into his. But again, I'll also come back down to The Shining, which is again that very, very, it's also one of the things I think reminds me of that, is that very kind of bluey white kind of very desolate kind of landscape, which sort of can numb you into a kind of a weird sort of trance-like state. I think that whenever you're in that sort of, almost like it hypnotizes you, and then other things do stick out, you notice the little details because everything else is so bland. That's my reading of it.
Yeah, it's very, very well thought out, well put together, very, very clever film all around. I'm coming away from this chat going, I'm actually a bigger fan of this than I thought I actually was. It has, like I said before, it has more levels than I think we probably give it a lot of credit for.
Yeah,
definitely gonna have to rewatch it and check that shaky cam thing to see if there's any correlation to where that happens in the movie and what's going on. Because I never noticed that.
I think there's an awful lot of people who won't have seen this film ever. I don't think it was particularly widely seen at the time. It's one of those little anomalies in Robin's career, but it's a really, for me, I think it's a really interesting film, and you know, I hope that the conversation does encourage people to kind of have a think about it and look. You know, if you're watching and listening and you have thoughts, if you don't like our reading, if you do like our reading, if you've got your own reading on this, like, get in touch with us, post comments on our website, post comments on our blog, get in touch with us on Twitter and all the rest of it, and argue the case, because we don't exist in a vacuum. It's a conversation, and you're part of the conversation. Does that sound sincere?
Yeah, I think. No, probably not.
Probably not.
Do it again.
You insincere shit. So if that everyone happy with nothing else we want to say now?
No. Just make a point.
Go watch it.
Seeking it out.
Yeah.
So there you go. Thank you very much, Ben and Neil, for joining us today, for indulging in this sort of Robin Williams a celebration, I guess.
Yeah, definitely a celebration.
You know,
I'm gonna have to watch a lot more of the other films, which I haven't seen, just to see what kind of films they were, because I wasn't aware that he'd done so many.
Yeah, there's a lot out there to explore, and a lot of there's more than one Robin Williams, I think, which is, I hope what anyone who watches this will realize is that he was an actor with quite a bit of range, and more than one screen persona. So look, without further ado, thank you very much, Ben Simpson, for joining me. Thank you very much, Neil Sedgwick.
Thank you.
Films and Faith. You can go and Google that. And me, Robert J. Simpson. As I say, if you've enjoyed this, do subscribe, follow the podcast. We've got more of these coming out. You can interact with us. We're on Facebook at CinePunked. We're also on Instagram as CinePunked Film. We're also on Twitter as CinePunked, and our website is www.cinepunked.com. Until the next time, goodbye.
Bye.